Welcome to This Team is Killing Us, a podcast about what the Carolina Panthers do to good people. I am Dimitri Ravanas. She is Lauren Brownlow. And Lauren, what is killing me today is I'm genuinely not sure why we're even bothering with the preseason if nobody is going to play.
It's literally sucking what little life I have inside of me.
Yeah.
I feel like watching them play in the preseason slowly saps it out of me. Really. I made it through a half again, partially just because I told myself I would, and I'm trying to honor the pledges I make myself.
Sure.
Of if I commit, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I just was like, why? Why am I doing this? I just got mad because guess what? Whenever they had those patented drives where they'd go backwards, because that's, I think, at one point when I texted you and I said, I sometimes wonder if the Panthers think that the object of the game is to slowly move the ball backwards.
Yeah.
But not quite in your own end zone, just as close as possible.
Yeah. You can't just turn around and run it backwards. That's cheating. You have to try to move forward and eventually go backwards. You made it through a half. Lauren, I made it through literally a play and a half of the Panthers on offense and decided, fuck this. I'm not doing this to myself. Nobody of consequence is playing. And maybe it's not fair to say, hey, I'm not doing this to myself, and then ask the question, why is this team incapable of scoring? But that's part of the reason why I'm not doing this to myself.
Well, here, I can help if you'd like some help.
Please.
Guess what? Guess what they did? They got in the red zone. They had a drive where they were really cooking offensively.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, okay, I see what DaveCanales maybe looks like when he gets into a bit of a rhythm. All right. I'm interested. They were doing some different things. Do you know what they did on second and long in the red zone?
I'm going to guess turned it over.
No. They ran an end around to make
Oh, sure.
That lost
and I'm guessing,
yards.
I was about to say, I'm guessing that was the end of them in the red zone.
And I was like, pretty basic for all intents and purposes. Correct. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me right now. I'm literally being trolled. Someone is literally doing this. Like I've told you, someone is literally doing this to specifically upset me.
Yeah. Okay. So here's my question for you about what we are seeing right now. Does it matter? I mean, so much of what we need to see happen is all about BryceYoung and the weapons on offense. And those guys are not going to see the field. My understanding is all of them, Young and a couple of different receivers, had really good sessions in those joint practices they did with the Jets before the actual game. But in terms of what shows up on TV, Bryce, Leggett, Deontay, none of these guys are seeing the field. So is there reason for concern right now?
I mean, I guess maybe, you know what? I feel like maybe part of the strategy is if they suck in the preseason this year, they can't say it's because they're playing the starters because they're not. So they can always be like, look, these guys aren't starting. This is second string. We're only going to get better, blah, blah, blah. Because God knows there's nowhere to go but up. Certainly offensively. Defensively, I've been pleasantly surprised. But again, it's preseason. No one's doing a whole lot. And also, spoiler alert, most NFL offenses suck to some degree or another. So
I will tell you one guy in the preseason that actually has stood out on defense, not because of the stats he's racking up, but the rookie they drafted out of Kentucky, Trevin Wallace, who I'll admit was the guy. Dude, I thought he was the wasted pick of all of the draft picks. And
I loved the pick actually, but maybe that's just because I am a sucker for a dude like that. I am a sucker for a linebacker that has had I know it's hard when you get to the NFL level because you could be a really good college linebacker and you're just not going to translate if you don't have some of the things that you need to have. But this dude's just not to use the cliche they always use, but that dude's just a football player.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's not so much about the numbers, although the numbers have been pretty good. I think he had 2 sacks and another tackle for a loss in this game and a pass breakup, but he's just always around the ball.
Yes.
That indicates a level of motor that was missing at times last year on both sides of the ball, not just on defense.
And frankly, not putting him in this role already. So I'm not, slow down.
Yeah.
It's just preseason. It's bad offenses they're facing, not for whatever, all the caveats you want to throw out. But like the energy he brings is the first time I've seen something reminiscent of like a Frankie Louvu's energy.
Right.
Who was probably the only Panther that I remember feeling that way about last year. So
yeah. I would say it's probably a fair assessment that if Trevin Wallace is getting this much time in the preseason, the plan is, at least in the beginning of the year, that he's not going to be one of the starters. So if there is time for him to grow both physically and mentally into this game, and then eventually he is that Frankie Louvu type, I'm all for it. I do think, like, I do always keep in mind, like, a guy like Mike Boone, who has had some really explosive runs out of the backfield during the preseason. All of the guys that sort of get a nice little check mark next to their name for their performance in the secondary, like, dude, these guys are on the cut line for a reason. Like, it's nice they're having these moments, but they're going against guys in similar situations. Like, you would have to be the Bears, who are literally breaking in a rookie quarterback and a rookie wide receiver, to have anyone of note start in the NFL anymore, it seems like.
I wonder how many of the Panthers draft picks played for the Bears.
Well, this year there's one key one that, and you know what, we'll get to that a little bit later. Yeah, we do, because I think it's a little bit overblown what we saw from Caleb on what was it?
Oh, I thought you just meant like how bad that trade ended up being, because somehow an already bad trade at the time suddenly looks worlds worse for just.
Well, listen, you'll never get me to acknowledge that trading for BryceYoung was a bad thing.
That's not the part you could take that out of it. Look at everything else, and you're still looking at that.
Sure. I mean, what you gave up is a big part of the reason that BryceYoung had the kind of season he did last year, now has to have the kind of season he has to this year.
Yes. Like, so this is a team that was the worst in the league last year and is like still up against the cap. How does that even happen?
So I do want to circle back on not scoring for just a second here, because I do wonder if you worry that this is the sign of something deeper. I mean, does it give you concern about things like a lack of depth or even the play calling?
Do I worry the Panthers think that they're not allowed to score touchdowns? I've been worried about that for years, literal years. No, I mean, look, I will say this. It's not the one thing that the one like solace I get, I guess, from watching these preseason games is watching the other team get the ball on offense as well. Right. Because usually it's just as bad, or if not worse.
That is something I was going to point out. Like, I think through however many preseason games there are this year, the majority, like the overwhelming majority of NFL teams have not scored more than 17 points in a game so far. Like, everybody is clearly readjusted the way they're handling the preseason.
There's partly that. I do agree with that. And so it's also like, why do we have to, that's part of my, like, why do we have to sit through this and talk about it?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, this is offensive. Like, this is it looks like you're trying not to score on purpose sometimes. It's hard to tell with the Panthers because sometimes it looks the same, but as usual. But like, yeah, I mean, I think it's just concerning because, like, obviously these games don't mean anything. It doesn't matter. They could lose all of them by 30. It really wouldn't matter. But the point is just that, like, I guess at some point you just in general would like to see the team wearing your colors in present day times, not a highlight package, of which, by the way, like half of the pregame hype video was something well from the past.
Yeah.
Not
Here's something else that, like, all right, this is particularly
I was like, they're about to run out of touchdowns.
This is particularly true of the Panthers, although, there are other offensive coaches you would say this about.
Yes.
What I am disappointed, I don't mind if the Panthers are not scoring. I would like to see part of the reason they're not scoring be because they are breaking in some really new, complicated playbook. And
we did get that end around, Dimitri.
Okay, so yeah, but at this point, like end around is like, that's Frank Wright's idea of like, oh, we're going to trick him here.
Didn't we literally joke about that because he kept dropping it?
Yeah.
we literally joked that they should just hand him the ball, but he might drop that. He didn't. And actually, I saw him catch a few and not drop them. So I was happy for him.
Yeah. You're talking Jonathan Mingo?
Yes. That's literally the only positive that I could say about anyone on the offense whatsoever. Because I'm just like, how do you keep managing to go that way? You're supposed to be going that way.
Yeah.
Don't go that way.
Lauren, last time you and I saw each other, let's talk about something from the offense that makes you happy. Because last time you and I saw each other, we were walking out of the OG Triangle Media Studios in downtown Raleigh, and we were talking about why SteveSmith is not regularly in a booth somewhere. Like, he works for NFL Network, but he's on a studio show. These are the only games, for the most part, he calls. I think one time he called one of the overseas games from the studio, but that's not a regular thing for him. In the second half of this game, he delivered a conversation with Anish Shroff that just makes you go, the rest of the league deserves this personality, not just on from Steve, from anybody.
Yes.
Sitting in the analyst position. I want you to hear their conversation about pain relief here.
Drink, you can just pour it on there, right?
Vicks Vapor Rub or the Tussin?
The Tussin.
I mean, it's dual
threat, versatility.
Yeah. We call that, I'm African American. We call that your jerry rigging. That's a great play. Pass breakup.
I didn't have a natural segue, Steve.
With Coach Canales. Look at him. He's so happy. He raised his hand. He almost had his belly button.
SteveSmith gives absolutely zero shits about whether or not you are having a good time, because he's having the best time.
Listen, you know how I feel, how I've always felt about SteveSmith.
Oh, sure.
And how I continue to feel. I would listen to him talk about literally anything. It makes me laugh, usually when he means to, but just sometimes just by being his wonderful, beautiful self. Yeah. He is a one of a kind, truly. When he plays for you, you love him. When he doesn't, you might hate him a little. But even now, I would assume he's the type of player that probably at least engenders, like, from what I've at least noticed, like respect. From opposing fans, and even chuckles at times, especially when like the trash talk or whatever was not directed at your team and directed at someone else. And there was a time in my life when I would have literally run through a brick wall for him. Literally. Wow. If he had said, please do this, Brownlow, I need you to, I would have been like, sure. If he'd been like, if he needed my lower leg, I would have given it to him. I love him.
I mean, as your friend, I'm concerned. As the co-host of this podcast, I'm very delighted to be working with somebody like that.
I don't feel that way anymore. Not because of anything he's done wrong or anything, just because I'm older now and I know how much more selfish I need to be in this life. And also that I only get one leg and one, and I kind of need them. But you know what? Like I could not be running through a brick wall right now. That would not end well.
He is part of, actually, he might have been the beginning of a trend, because I look at a dude like Marshawn Lynch, who has decided his broadcasting job will be like a 5 or 10 minute segment on the pregame show on Thursday Night Football, but he's not going to waste all that time in the booth. Aqib Talib a couple of years ago did like, I think 4 games, was an entire season.
I never understood why that experiment was greenlit.
I will not lie to you. I found Aqib way more honest than most guys that recently removed from the field. But I think it is this new generation of guys that just like, yeah, I don't have to impress you. I'll do what I want to do when I want to do it, the way I want to do it. Like, there are very few dudes that retire now and do like, I don't know, like Drew Brees did, like JJ Watt did, where it was like a rush to immediately get a prime position of some sort.
Yeah, I think like SteveSmith, he lives in Charlotte with his family. He is a big family guy, especially now that he's retired, because I know he wants to I've heard him talk about that. He really wants to be there for his kids and the things that they've got going on. But his kids are getting older and older now, which is crazy to think about, because now I'm like, God, how old are his kids? Are they in college now? Like,
I know.
Because I remember when they were really young. But like one thing I've always loved the most about him is how much of his career has come at least in part out of spite.
Sure.
That's my favorite kind of thing. Basically, like, you know how long it was for at least a decade that he would bring up the fact that he was drafted as a punt returner, where he was drafted. No one thought he could do it, blah, blah, blah. He kept it in his locker, literally. Like people saying, why did the Panthers waste this pick on a punt returner? And I think he was 4th round. I want to say, I have to look it up to be sure.
He was 3rd round, right?
Third round punt return. Yeah. Like, I keep that in my locker. I still remember the way he said it and everything. And I was like, I love how mad he is at everything. And he would find spite out of thin air. He could find it. He could find someone to be mad at, or just like some. That's all he was just this little, and he was little, but he was this little ball of spite. And I just, I lived for that. And he played like just so hard, and he was such a badass and so tough. He played hurt so much and would just never bitch about it. He played with some just awful quarterbacks. You would never see him complain.
That's kind of what I was going to hit on. Now, granted, obviously you had those kind of bottom out years that result in Cam being the quarterback, but long before they started treating quarterbacks like, you got to be the hero, we don't have anything else on this team, it was Steve all the time. It was Steve, to a lesser extent D'Angelo and Steven Davis, but it was really like all the chips are down. Everybody in that stadium, whichever stadium it is, knows the ball is going to SteveSmith, and 9 times out of 10, if he didn't come up with it, it wasn't a matter of like not being where he needed to be. It was the ball getting jarred loose, pass getting broken up. He was a difference maker in a tremendous way. I do hate for Panthers fans that guys like him and also Cam are satisfied not being in a booth with regularity, because I do think that those are such big personalities that it would actually kind of raise the profile of the history of this team a little bit if they were front and center on a national stage.
Yeah, Greg Olsen helps some. He's a little embarrassed of us, which I don't blame him. So it's fine. And he also has like other teams he played for. So yeah, and technically SteveSmith played for the Ravens as well, which literally.
I will tell you, when I ran into Greg out in Phoenix for the Eagles, I think it was the Eagles Chiefs Super Bowl that he called, was when I, said hello and introduced myself as from North Carolina. Like, he has nothing but, like, I don't know. You're right.
I just there are a lot of on air, right?
Yeah. Well, what I was saying is there are a lot of teams that he played for, but clearly he has a connection here. But I think that it's fair to say, probably because both of those guys, the overwhelming majority of their career was with Carolina. Steve and Cam are just this different level of associated with the team that most of our offensive veterans and legends, alumni, I don't know what you would call them, but most of them aren't in the way that those two are.
No, I mean, and Cam, when he was, to be fair too, Cam, when he was on the team, was never quite as candid as we see him now. Which I get it, right? I mean, it makes sense. Why would you be as candid back then when there are guys that you might say something about that might want to take your head off a little more than even usual if you're Cam Newton? But like for Smitty, I mean, that's always who he's been, which is also what's beautiful about him. Like, he really hasn't changed very much. Like, I think if anything, maybe some of the hesitation, because I wonder if when Steve's kids are in college, if they're not already, and he's feeling a little stir crazy, maybe he does decide to give it a go. But I do also, I don't know if that's the format for him, because my dude just says whatever. And there are definitely some moments where you could.
Hey, look, Netflix is going to have a couple of games every year now. That might be the place to see the best SteveSmith.
It would be amazing. Like the Ice Up Son, I still wear the t-shirt from after the Patriots game. I love that so much. I miss that energy from a receiver for sure. He was like a I don't know. He was almost like a mean little running back playing receiver or something. Loved everything about him. I wept when he was not playing literally wept real tears when he was with the Ravens. It was so hard for me. Easily my favorite Panther ever. It's not close, really.
We are, under a week away from you being able to read Lauren Brownlow's thoughts about the Panthers every single Monday as part of our OG Fans newsletter. Thank you to everybody who is signed up. You know, Lauren, we did that Founders Club, which is like for $200. You got a year-long subscription and you're going to get 2 gifts. We have sold 54 of those so far. That's like the overwhelming majority of our subscriptions so far are the Founders Club stuff. So that's awesome. Thank you so much. There's so much more coming with OG Fans, whether it is the exclusive podcast, the exclusive written content, and it's never done. We're always growing with that. So if you've not already done so, ogtrianglemedia.com and sign up for our premium service subscription content at OG Fans. Yes?
Well, I don't know why this is what popped into my head. My brain is broken, so apologies to everyone. But at one point, and I almost texted you this, but I'm like, no, it's fine. I'm sure he's doing something else more worthwhile than this. But I was thinking it when they were showing the sideline shots during the Jets Panthers, and I was like, might be 2 of the cutest head coaches in the league as well.
Ooh. Okay. Let me promote the podcast festival. We're going to circle back on this because I have very complicated feelings about Robert Saleh.
I thought he was the cute. For me, I thought he was the most handsome before.
Really? Over Sean McVay?
Doesn't do it for me.
Okay. I see it. Let me real quick tell you that the Sports Podcast Festival is right around the corner. Literally, by the time next weekend's episode is dropped, we will be going, didn't everybody have a great time at the Sports Podcast Festival? And Lauren, a little birdie tells me you're going to have a starring role in one of our shows, Hijinks.
Maybe, perhaps. I'm not at liberty to disclose at the time.
I do not want to tell, I do not want to give anything away other than I was told that there are quote unquote exact text from our friend Ryan Nanny, plans for Lauren. So we will see exactly.
Can confirm that part. Yes.
There are still tickets available. Go ahead and get them at therialto.com. It is Ovius and Giglio, Hand in the Dirt, and the Shutdown full cast. Lauren and I will be on and off the stage all night long as well. It's the Sports Podcast Festival presented by Breeze Through. Get your tickets now at therialto.com. They're $59.99. If you wait to buy them at the door, I am going to charge you $10 more for making me sweat out, making some money off of this thing. Therialto.com for your tickets. All right, Lauren, before we get into BryceYoung, here is my feeling on Robert Saleh.
Okay.
Saleh, right? Not Saleh?
All
right.
There's a reason I didn't say the name. I think
fair.
so. I'm pretty sure you are right, but I also have been, my old lady brain sometimes gets that wrong.
Yeah. Is he handsome? I see it. I personally would not call him handsome, but I see what is attractive about him. But I'm very comfortable in my sexuality to admit all of this stuff. However, he is such an incompetent boob that gets chance after chance that it makes me hard to stomach his very existence.
Well, certainly not alone in that department. So at least if there's going to be one, it can be one that's a little easier on the eyes.
Sure. Okay. That's fair.
It's partly the way I see it. And
I do have a natural predisposition to disliking and dismissing anything associated with the Jets.
There's that too. So I get that. I have that as well. I don't know why. It's not like Panthers are any less of a laughing stock.
No, but here's why. Lauren, because I thought about this when I watched my one play of this game. We are very comfortable being a laughing stock, and we never insist that we are not. Jets fans will immediately start talking about Super Bowl III the second you say there is no bright spot in your shitty franchise's history.
To be fair, the only one I know of very well is Adam Gold, and he will absolutely talk shit about the Jets.
Yeah.
And in fact, he will go out of his way to do that, which in that way, I'm like relatable. So I get that. Yeah, I don't know. And you mentioned McVay. For me, he has the eyes of an insane person.
Agreed.
like dangerously insane.
Yeah.
It's just his face, I think. So like, I'm not judging. I don't think he's like secretly hiding bodies in the basement or anything, but he has the eyes of a person that they like, that would be arrested later. The neighbors would be like, wow, he was really quiet, kept to himself, seemed very polite. And I'd be like, yeah, but what about his eyes? Like,
he also
talk about that.
Yeah. He also does look like the villain of a like thriller set in Frontier Times.
Yeah. It's just like, I need, like, eyes are big for me. Like DaveCanales has very friendly eyes.
Sure.
Very lively.
Agreed.
You know, and friendly. And but Sean McVay, it looks like he is ready to yell at you before you've even spoken, just by his face. It's not his fault. But
so
like,
Sally and I went to see that new M. Night Shyamalan movie this weekend, Trapped.
Oh, how was it?
Lauren, it might be, and I am not exaggerating, it might be the worst movie I've ever seen. Like, it's horrible.
That's not going to help me not want to go see it.
The amount of like, oh yeah, I accept that could happen, that you have to do in this is astounding. But the character that Josh Hartnett plays does portray that same sort of like, boy, he's so positive. This could be like toxic positivity shit that every time I hear Canales speak, I worry about.
I could see that. I do get that. Yeah, there are people like that for sure. But he seems so chill though. Sure. That it kind of offsets it a little bit, because a lot of times the toxically positive people are also the ones that are like, woo, and you're just like, take it down like 80 notches, please.
Right.
But he's very much like, hey, what's up? Yeah, we're feeling good. Everybody's feeling great. What's going on? Like,
it's funny when the idea you put out there of toxically positive people, the first football coach that comes to mind is the guy Dave Canales points to as his mentor, Pete Carroll. That's what I think of with your description.
Because you know what? Now this has me, God, this has me worried now. Okay, because I will say this. Would I rather be around a very positive person, even one to the point that makes me suspicious, than I would like an asshole? Of course, if I have to choose. However, the very positive people are always like, eventually it wears very thin. Because
yes, of course.
It depends. Like, if you can, we've said this from the jump with Canales, if you can mix the positivity with realism, we can be good. And you could just say, hey, we suck right now, but let's not suck. Let's suck less today. And then maybe we'll suck less tomorrow. Cool. But if you're like, we don't suck, we're the best. It's like, we all know that we suck. So let's just please speak to me like an adult. You know what I mean?
I think, I don't know. I think I might gravitate more towards wanting to be around an asshole. Like, just being fair, Lauren, there's a reason you and I
don't deal well with those people, though.
No, I hear you. But I think you and I have the right level of pessimistic realism that works for each other.
100%. Now, my ideal, my prototype for the personality of a coach I want to be around, to be fair, is like Paul Johnson, Bill Belichick.
Oh, sure.
Those are my favorite to be around, because to me, that's the cynical realism that I'm here for, but with also the trolliness and the dryness that I love.
Before we wrap talking a little bit about some of the comments about the offense coming out of those joint practice sessions, can I tell you my favorite fact I learned about Paul Johnson in recent years?
Please.
Do you know that he doesn't need his coaching salary? He's like a millionaire off of South Georgia real estate.
I didn't know that, actually. I'm surprised I don't, because my good friend Wes Durham is very good friends with him, and I always find out the most random or like every now and then I'll get a random picture and be like, just me and Paul hanging out. I'm like, oh my God. Like, tell him I said, what's up?
I love the idea of Wes and Paul tearing up the town together.
You know, he never had a playbook, really.
Yeah, I could tell by watching football.
Yeah, he'd still tear a lot of people's asses up. Just
it's true.
Without a damn playbook. I love it.
All right, let's talk about the nice things that were said about this offense, particularly about BryceYoung in these joint practices. Robert Saleh, like, he is the kind of mouthpiece that Bryce needed all of last year as a coach. Did you see what he had to say when he was asked what his impressions were of what the Panthers are becoming as they reset again?
Mm-mm.
He said that there is no way anybody can look you in the eye with a straight face and tell you Bryce Young failed last year. This is an organization that is still working on its philosophy and its weapons. And in that state, they've got a damn good quarterback. He is going to be just fine in this league. Look, there is a little bit of hyperbole.
A lot of fine print in that statement, I feel like. I'm like, whoa.
Well, see, I think there's a lot of hyperbole when you are talking about your opponent's very young quarterback, but I think he is way more honest than Dave Tepper, Scott Fitterer, or Frank Reich were ever capable of being last year, and saying, and look, you don't often hear NFL coaches say this about their opponents, but it's like, man, this place is a mess. The fact that he completed 80 passes last year is a miracle.
Yeah. And I mean, look, I was going to say, like, in that context, because at first when he said, you can't look me in the eyes and say he failed, I was going to be like, I don't even know if Bryce would be able to look you in the eyes and not say he failed at least a little bit for at least like the record, if nothing else.
Well,
like,
I also think like that's a high
bar. I'm not a QB
bar,
wins girly, but like,
yeah, but look, I think that he failed is a high bar. I could look you in the eye and say he was not good last year.
Right. Like we understand, like we talked a lot about the context that Saleh mentioned as well. You know, like we have talked a lot about that, and we understand what a big role that played. And frankly, like maybe we'll continue to play a little bit, because I think one of our biggest worries was how residual is that experience for them, like how much does that stick with him, at least a little bit, because there's a degree of like football trauma that he incurred last year. It's just like, not trying to be dramatic about it, it's really what happened. I mean, we've talked about it. Look what happened to David Carr. There's plenty of other quarterbacks. It's not just now. And sometimes that kind of stuff is hard to shake.
Well, and we've also talked about what a 180 the situation in Carolina is from any other situation that Bryce has played in before. And I think that's important.
Yes.
These comments were part of a bigger story that ESPN's David Newton did. And I liked the idea here, because they are playing the Jets and Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers' introduction to being a day in, day out starter is the polar opposite from what Bryce got, right? Rodgers sat for 3 years behind one of the best quarterbacks the league had at the time and got to learn the position. Then Rodgers got to be the veteran that Jordan Love sat behind for a few years before the Packers then were ready to put Love in that role, whereas Bryce just sort of got thrown in to the fire. And Newton's question to a lot of people, both that were a part of this joint practice and also people he has access to as being part of the ESPN family, was, what is the better approach for a young quarterback? One of the people that weighed in was Eli Manning, who said that you cannot tell me that playing is not the best way to get ready. The Panthers will be better in 2024 because Bryce played in 2023.
I hope so, man. I do.
Yeah.
It is. Well, I just couldn't stop thinking, though, as you're talking about that, like, it is genuinely wild to me that I've now lived long enough to see Aaron Rodgers turn into, well, minus the reprehensible alleged welfare fraud and the unsolicited picks.
Well, now he offers different unsolicited things.
Yeah, he sure
medical
does,
and political opinions.
It's wild how you can like live long enough to see yourself become the thing you hated the most.
Yeah.
And like we've watched that. Like I loved that guy at that point, the point in his career where that started happening.
I will say that was the first crack that I felt in, like, I don't know that I want to be a fan of the Buccaneers as long as John Gruden is there. Because he passed on Aaron Rodgers to take Cardell Williams, because John Gruden doesn't do rookie quarterbacks.
Cadillac, what's up?
I mean, listen, Cadillac had a great rookie season. It did.
Great.
He turned into what he was at Auburn. He couldn't stay healthy for more than 2 plays at a time, and then he had to come off the field.
They're usually against us.
That's true. Fortunately, at that time, the Panthers were right, or excuse me, the Buccaneers were right on that, like, 9-7, 8-8 line, and they could always count on the Panthers to be the team that pushed them one way or the other.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
An unnamed source said that, and I like this quote. Don't know if it's fair. It's an unnamed source. It is cited as somebody close to Bryce. So let's be honest and say this could be Bryce, right? that says this.
All right,
I mean, look, a source close to, like you have written for a long time, you know that there is always a possibility that could be the dude himself that is saying this.
I've never used a source that was the person, but anyway, go on.
Okay.
Personally,
He said, hang on, let me find it again. If a guy is ruined by what happened to Bryce last year, that guy was never going to be your franchise quarterback anyway.
I mean, that's true. Although, maybe it's because I have hot person bias, but I genuinely feel that, like, had David Carr had a different situation, things might have turned out differently for him.
That's exactly who I was going to point out. Like, I don't know that David Carr could have been, I guess, was it Carson Palmer, the first round pick, the number one pick the next year? Like, I don't know that he could have had Palmer's career if he didn't go to the Texans, but
for sure.
I don't know that we would ever know one way or the other. I think it is very clear he got ruined by a first year expansion franchise situation.
Wasn't he sacked like 70 times?
It's like an untouchable record at this point.
Well, don't you? If anyone would threaten to
I'm sure you saw the video clips of Caleb Williams pass, roll out, break a sack, throw down the sideline, and hit Rome Odunze for a touchdown.
Listen, I saw that there was some excitement. Do I watch preseason clips of any kind without?
I only saw it because my friend Taylor Dahl tweeted it multiple times over the weekend. And look, it was a great play. It really was a great play, but it was not different at all from. And I'm sure you saw that tweet that was out there, like, hey, Bryce Young did this exact thing in the win against the Texans last year. I mean, the play looks exactly the same when you line them up side by side. My question is, is that segment of Panthers fans that are always going to be pining for not having CJ Stroud's last season happen in a Panthers uniform, are they now going to go into this season feeling the same way about Caleb Williams?
I mean, there may be some degrees of that. I think, like, frankly, what makes the Bears trade horrendous is not the Caleb Williams part, although that's its own thing, certainly. That obviously, if that guy ends up being your guy, but we're still like a lot TBD there, in my opinion. And it is a Chicago quarterback. Like, no offense, I know I know our situation isn't a lot better here in Carolina. Not saying it is, but like, there's a history there, and it's not a good one. So I'm still like, whoa, hold your horses. But like, look at somebody was running it down on the radio. I almost ripped the radio out of my car. I was like, are you? Like, literal multiple starters now have come out of this. And I'm just sitting here like, this is why I said this to begin with. Not only that, but like, low key, it really hurts. I think that's the part that hurts Bryce the most. It is everything they gave up. And they're not done. There is more this year. They're not even done.
Right. And the second round pick that the Panthers will have in the 2025 draft is the one that they got from the Rams, not their own. That goes to Chicago again this year.
Like, the thirst level for a quarterback is it's like irrational levels. Like, it just is. Like, the Panthers turn into like the girl on The Bachelor who like throws all the other girls under the bus and like tries to pull the guy off by himself multiple times during the night. And everybody's like, whoa, calm down. Like, and then ends up getting herself kicked off the show. Like, that's what the Panthers acted like with, we saw a quarterback. We're like, no, let's just throw up all over ourselves and hope it works out. And it's like, it's not just the Caleb part. Although that, again, that part on its own is not good, because you could have had that pick and taken him. And if he works out, it's going to be yet another. But it's really just everything else. There's like defensive guys, offensive guys. I mean, DJ Moore plus two. I mean,
that's the only one that I'll push back on, because I think had they not made that move to move up and get a quarterback, I don't know that the Panthers would have. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they end up doing it because they are in position to get Caleb Williams, but I don't think the Panthers would shell out the kind of contract that DJ Moore got from the Bears this offseason.
No, I mean that was part of the reason to move him in the first place. So like that's why there's a reason I mentioned him last. But it's also like guys they were able to some of it was just guys they were literally able to draft.
Yeah, of course.
Picks that the Panthers needed that they then turned into starters. And you look at who the Panthers have drafted in recent years, and you're just like, it's and it's like they're so far behind, and immediately what we did with that trade is make that team so much better. And every time they talk about the Bears, the mention of Bears, I get upset, and I have to take a minute because I'm just like, it's not their fault. I'm not blaming them. Like, they did what they should have done with it. But and do the Panthers even use those picks to the way they should have been used? Who knows, right? But at the same time, they were able to do all those things. And that's why people like me and others were like, don't do this.